Welcome in to the Skol Purple podcast. As some breaking news on this Thursday, as I finish chewing my pizza here.
Is it pizza or is it a pizza bagel?
well, um, I may have overcooked it slightly, so it does have a little bit of a crisp, maybe a bagel taste to it, a crisp
It may
bagel
be more
taste.
pizza bagely.
That's right. That's right. Well, the reason we are here this evening, if you did not hear the news, which I'm guessing most of you did, Dalvin Cook is going to be released from the Minnesota Vikings. Tony, myself, Carson here, the Skull Purple podcast. We were kind of waiting, Tony, for this point. You know, you and I actually had the conversation this week like, okay, should we record? Should we not? Should we wait for Dalvin to finally come out with the news on Dalvin Cook? And here we are. So we waited to record, and here we are. And also some Danielle Hunter steam that came out yesterday. So Vikings news galore here to talk about. But let's start with Dalvin Cook. Not really a surprise, right? We kind of had the inkling, at least, that he could be released, he could be traded this offseason. And it sounds more and more like the Vikings are going to be releasing him. And I would say all of this, and you kind of mentioned this to me earlier today, it seems like all of this, oh, we could get this for Dalvin, all this trade talk and all this stuff, maybe was just like the Vikings trying to pump up his value a little bit. It didn't seem like there was a lot of people just banging down the door to get Dalvin Cook, which should say something to the people that are like, oh, we should keep Dalvin Cook. It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe the Vikings have it right because nobody seems to be giving them something worth value. I'm guessing that they were not getting much if they're at this point just going to release him, and they save right around $10 million by releasing him, which then gives them the ability to either sign Danielle Hunter to a contract extension or potentially trade him. Dun dun dun. Uh, but
Right.
what are your thoughts on Dalvin Cook getting released? Sounds like he's very, as you saw on the picture of the thumbnail here on YouTube, the picture of him in Miami. He posted that to his Instagram page, so he very clearly would love to go back to Miami. Of course, he went to Florida State, so lots of ties to Miami and the state of Florida.
Yeah, I mean, again, you already said it. I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised by the release. I I've been assuming that he is or was going to be released there for a little bit. So, at the end of the day, to your point, and something we talked about off camera is that I just think a lot of the smoke that we've seen over the last couple weeks, with us basically going, or a lot of the reports saying, well, it's a bidding war for Dalvin, right? Like I don't think there was ever a bidding war. Now, I will say, I do think that Dalvin's a talented player. I'm sure there were interested parties. I think what probably detracted most of the trade suitors was the contract. And the fact is that in order for a trade to get done, at least in my opinion, what made the most amount of sense was the Vikings were probably going to have to eat some of that contract, or have Dalvin agree to a restructure as part of the trade. And I just don't. I think you add all those pieces together. Every player is going to want them to maximize their worth. I just think it probably didn't make sense for any of the parties involved. Um, so I think Dalvin's a good player. I just think that at the end of the day, he wasn't worth $16 million. What he was due to be paid this year, and at the end of the day, the Vikings, I think, as uncomfortable as it might feel for some of us Vikings fans, the move away from having this bell cow back and going to a more running back by committee style, I think it only benefits this team in the long run because that's the way the league is going. If you want a progressive offense, you got to get rid of this idea that you've got this bell cow back. I mean, you tell me the last time there's been a Super Bowl winner where there was the bell cow superstar running back. I don't know. I
Marshawn
can't.
Lynch.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I
That's
there
about
really
it.
hasn't been many in recent memory. So, um, I'm fine with it. I'm not sad about it. I like Dalvin. Doesn't mean I look if Dalvin cost $8 million, sure. But I think a byproduct of saying goodbye to Dalvin is we now get to move on and move into an offense that's really again just more designed for today's NFL. So I'm for it.
Oh, cool little thing Rick Spielman tweeted out. I just happened to see this. I wish I could put into words how special the Wilf family is. I lost all my Viking game balls during Hurricane Ian. To my surprise, I received a box today replacing all those game balls. I was truly blessed to work for the Wilf family, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. And he has a picture of all the game balls he got. That's kind of cool.
I saw that. I did think that was very cool. Definitely class act by the Wilfs there. So
And the
I think
Wilfs
that's a
are, I
cool
mean,
gesture.
that's one of the things we have to be happy about is the ownership in Minnesota. Like maybe they're not perfect, but they do a lot of really good things for the team and for other people. They treat their employees and former employees with class and with respect, and so they
Yeah.
kind of treat them like family. I know that whole thing can kind of be funny, but
Yeah,
like
I'm not sure the grocery store that fired me when I was 15 years old because I was an idiot is going to be sending me any game balls anytime soon.
yeah, that is probably true. That is probably true. But you know what? That's okay. That is
It's
okay.
okay. Yeah,
Uh,
and to be clear, I earned a lot of game balls while I was there. It's probably why I got fired.
there you go.
Yeah,
There
because it
you
was a grocery
go.
store.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. There you go. But back to the Dalvin Cook thing. I mean, you know it. Everybody that's listened to me on this podcast knows my stance. I would think by now on running backs. Don't pay running backs. That's a bad idea. Don't pay running backs unless it's get Skol Mafia in the building. Appreciate you getting in here, Skol Mafia. It's just one of those positions you don't pay buku bucks for anymore, or a lot of money, however you want to phrase it, because, like you said, the league is going towards this running back by committee system, and the Vikings are trying to do the same thing with the likes of Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, and maybe Kene Wongwu if he still has a spot on this team. Another question mark there, but especially with the new return rules. But anyways,
Sure.
Dalvin Cook likely to be released, and I just think, Tony, there's so much more that the Vikings can do with that $9 million. Not necessarily with going and signing a free agent, but like with using that money to go towards an extension for Danielle Hunter, or paying Danielle Hunter just more money coming up in this season, or different things like that. Because Danielle Hunter obviously needs a contract extension, or needs to be traded, or something needs to happen there. TJ Hawkinson is going to get a contract extension at some point, probably in training camp, maybe. And Justin Jefferson, like, same thing. In a couple of years, his contract extension is going to be getting started too. So I'm just kind of curious to see what Dalvin Cook gets. I'd be surprised, honestly, if he gets any more than like $5 million somewhere. And honestly, I think that might be a lot for Dalvin Cook these days. But yes, as Skol Mafia is pointing out here, sad to see him go because he was a good Viking. He was a really solid running back for several years. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and Dalvin Cook was making too much money compared to what the Vikings were looking to pay at that position. So, any other thoughts on Dalvin Cook before we talk about Danielle Hunter here?
No, I mean, Skull Mafia said it, and we've been talking about it. I mean, it's really the best move. It's the best move for the team. wish him nothing but the best and no ill will towards Dalvin. He's got to do what he's got to do, and then it's just kind of like, where does he end up? And of course that's all the speculation in the world. But you mentioned, the money going towards extensions. Yeah, right. Skol Mafia's got it right there. That's where my mind goes. Is we're gonna have to roll out the checkbook, get the Brinks truck backed up the old TCF, or not TCF, U.S. Bank. I don't know why we're going to TCF again. Um, but U.S. Bank Stadium,
Please no.
whatever bank, but U.S. Bank Stadium, because that extension's going to be a hefty one. So, yeah, I mean, and obviously it's kind of a natural segue going into the next topic, really, with when you talked about the other potential, news, or at least some of the smoke that's out there. You mentioned a potential extension for Danielle. So, Carson, I'm not going to steal your thunder. Yeah, kind of what are you hearing?
On Danielle Hunter, well, there was reports yesterday on Danielle Hunter that the Vikings could be enticed to trade him. I'm actually going to try and find it here. So here's what the actual tweet was from Ian Rappaport. He said, from inside mini camps live on NFL Plus, blah blah blah. The Vikings are receiving, receiving trade calls centered around star pass rusher Danielle Hunter, and the interest is real. A look inside the complex situation, and then he put a video talking with Tom Pelissero and Andrew Siciliano. That's a tongue twister there. Say that 5 times fast. East Coast Gridiron, by the way. Hey, what's going on? Appreciate got some friendly banter going on here in the comment section.
Absolutely.
But looks like Tony's been going in and out here. But Danielle Hunter potentially could be on the move. He's in the last year of his contract. I think there's got to be some sort of a resolution. I think the Vikings don't want to get rid of him for 2023 because they know how important he could be on this defense going into next year. But at the same time, if you aren't wanting him to stick around, or he's going to want too much money where you don't want to pay him that kind of money, could you just say, okay, we need to let him go? Or maybe even Danielle Hunter's at the point too, Tony, where it's like, okay, I don't want to be here if you can't commit to me this kind of money and for this many years.
Yeah, well, look, at the end of the day, Danielle's gonna, he wants some money, and I don't blame him. Again, kind of like Dalvin. But if you follow the kind of the timeline and how we got here, Danielle wanted more money what would have been 3 off seasons ago, 2 off seasons ago. I'm not good at math. They don't pay me to do math.
That was a few years ago, yeah.
And basically what they did is they restructured him so he was going to make the same amount of money, but they front loaded it. So he was going to make more money per year for the first couple of years. And then, of course, we're going to have this, basically dud year, which is where we're at now. And of course, it's not going to look good because we paid him all that other money up front. So now we finally arrived at the year that is going to look like crap on paper. So $5 million, I think he's supposed to make this year.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
I would love to keep Danielle Hunter. I would love to see what he would be able to do under Flores, especially losing Za'Darius. And, not that Za'Darius was amazing all year, but he certainly had his moments. First half of the season looked great. Right. But losing Za'Darius, and then if you lose Hunter on top of it, it kind of makes me wonder, like, where's the pass rush really going to come from? Certainly, off the edge, there's a lot of question marks. There's already question marks with Za'Darius leaving. So my opinion is that I'd like to keep Danielle, but kind of like what we said. Well, there we go. Kind of like what we said with Za'Darius, you can't force a guy to be here, and I don't know. I don't think Danielle would be a guy that would be kind of a cancer in the locker room. But at the same time, you don't want a guy that doesn't want to be there. That's all I'm going to say. And so if you can get a lot of capital for him, it just depends on what we're going to get. At this point, because it would create such a vacuum off the edge, you'd almost need it to be players. Like I don't know. I don't think it could be just draft capital, unless they've got some answers that I don't know about. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Or they are just going to be content with it being a rebuilding year on defense. I don't know. I mean, it pretty much was last year with veterans. So, I mean, but
Sure, yeah,
but yeah, I agree with you. If you lose that piece, you already lost Zadarius Smith, the other half of that duo from last year that was really pretty good, especially the first half of the year. Then that leaves a very big opening on your roster. I did see Matt Anderson recently just tweeted Yannick Ngakoue, old friend, is a free
yeah.
agent. So
I'll
he
pass
did
on that.
have 12 sacks last year, though, Tony. So just saying.
Yeah, you know what'll always chap my behind on the Ngakwe debacle here, and I get some of it might have been the Zimmer thing and probably where the defense was at that point, but man, I don't know. It felt like the guy kind of got his money and then he just didn't like. I didn't see like he was a zero effort guy, and like that to me, that screams bad locker room guy. Not a guy I'd want as certainly a leader of my defense. I'm a pass on that. You know.
Yeah. Yep. Appreciate David, Skol State of Mind,
Yeah.
chiming in here. Our former contributor on his own now. Appreciate you be getting in there. But yeah, I'm not opposed to it, Tony. I would actually not mind if the Vikings do take a rebuild approach on the
Sure.
defensive side, but I don't know if everybody's going to like it. But at the same time, if you can get, like Skol Mafia said, Hunter can get us a first with that cap hit. If you can get a first round pick, I am trading him in a heartbeat. There's no question in my mind. If you can get that kind of compensation for Danielle Hunter, I mean, obviously, if you're Quasi, you may be like, okay, what else can we get? Can we get a second to go with it? You want him to kind of say, hey, let's negotiate a little bit. What else are you willing to give up? But I think a first round pick for Danielle Hunter, a guy who's in his last year of his contract, like
Well,
I'd for sure go for that.
the contract. I mean, Skull Mafia there hit it on that nail on the head. I mean, the fact is he's getting next to nothing. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, for a guy that has the talent and the upside that he has, $5 million is pennies on the dollar, right?
Yep.
The problem that I have is just it's like it'd be kind of like this. Here's a good comparison. I also, and granted, I don't know. I want like my opinion, and anyone who's watched this podcast knows my opinion on Kirk Cousins. Okay, it always comes back to Kirk Cousins. I'm sorry in advance. Um, I I'm ready to move on from Kirk Cousins. Um, and but if you were to tell me that like San Francisco is offering a first round draft pick for Kirk Cousins, I mean, I'd probably take it, but I would also understand that like we're probably going to be garbage, and that's a hard pill to swallow as a fan. I don't know if Daniil's quite at that level where we would be garbage without him, but we would take a significant hit because again, we don't really have another replacement, right? Like there's not a lot of other help. So yes, I like the draft pick. It's probably a competitive team. So we're not talking about drafting top five. We're talking about the back end of the draft. Let's be honest, most likely, and that does matter because look, these draft picks are lottery picks, right? For every Justin Jefferson, there's about a million Jamarcus Russells. So first round draft picks aren't a sure thing either. We know what we have in Danielle Hunter. So that's what I mean. I think because of the lack of depth, it's got to be a player or players or a mix of a player and draft picks. I just don't think draft picks get it done. unless this team is ready to go rebuild mode. But that doesn't seem to be the messaging so far.
Well, let's play this card a little bit. We know Danielle Hunter in the offseason likes to work out in Houston, right? Let's just say that the Houston Texans are saying, okay, let's go ahead and explore a possibility of getting Danielle Hunter in here. Obviously, they're not going to give you Will Anderson Jr., right? But
Sure.
maybe they can give you a guy. I mean, and I'm not even saying that a guy from Houston would be like a comparable replacement, but I'm just saying if you could get a first round pick plus like Jerry Hughes, who's 34 years old, he's been a solid pass rusher in the past. He's old now, but if you could get a guy like that, or maybe a Jonathan Greenard, somebody along those lines. Derek Rivers, they have Chase Vinovich as well. Just a few names that you could maybe throw out there is like, hey, can you throw this our way and sweeten our deal a little bit for Hunter? Maybe that doesn't seem so bad. I'm not saying I would even do that for one of those guys. Plus, I would do it for a first round pick, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm not saying that would be an equivalent to Danielle Hunter, but you know what I've got. You know what I'm saying.
Well, let me ask you this question, Carson. Straight up, would you trade Danielle Hunter, player for player, CJ Stroud?
Ooh. Yeah, I probably would. The only reason I hesitate, and you and I have had this discussion, I was not as high on CJ Stroud as some. I still think he's probably going to be the second best quarterback from this draft, but Bryce Young was my guy. Bryce Young is still my guy. But I think I would be very intrigued to see what Kevin O'Connell could do with him. And I think it gives you more promise than Jaron Hall. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I honestly, if they would do that, which they wouldn't, but you know,
doubt it.
Unless with what Mr. Skol Mafia just said here, having 3 first-round picks next year, do they like one of those 2 quarterbacks better? Drake May or Caleb Williams?
Yeah.
Do they like one of those guys better and say, hey, Vikings, here's CJ Stroud. We'll take Danielle Hunter off your hands, call it an even swap, and now you can trade Kirk Cousins to San Francisco, and Tony gets his wish.
Yeah. And for anybody that's new listeners, I don't hate Kirk Cousins. I just think Kirk Cousins is not a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. He could win a Super Bowl with a Super Bowl caliber team. That's why he's good. He's just not. He's not Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's not in that class, which is okay. Not a lot of people are. So, anyway, that's a discussion for many episodes that we've done over the course of the last season, and I'm sure plenty of episodes in the future. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. It just popped in my head because I was trying to remember who they drafted, and then of course, CJ Stroud. I'm right there with you though. I was not as high on Stroud as some others, so that would be an interesting one. I thought you were going to say they'd take Cousins and Hunter, and I'd say, well, got to give us a little more than C.J. Stroud for that. They better become
Jerry Hughes, man, and Jerry Hughes.
Something. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. At this stage of the off season, it's always very, very difficult to trust almost anything. Because some of it's going to be true, some of it's going to be smoke, some of it is just chess play, these teams putting out news that isn't really news or kind of half-truths. I mean, because it was just a week ago, we had all these analysts on Twitter and ESPN that were saying, "Oh, there's a lot of interest with Dalvin with these trades. There's a bidding war that's starting to brew for Dalvin," and clearly that was just a bunch of bunk, right? And I kind of figured it was. It was just to give the illusion that there was some bidding war and to hopefully probably start a bidding war. But that didn't happen, and clearly we are where we are with Dalvin. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with Danielle. I'm sure he'll probably get paid. To be honest with you, maybe part of it, them deciding to go and release Dalvin now, right on the heels of this Danielle Hunter talk starting up. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's to clear space so they can get this extension done for Danielle.
By the way, back on Dalvin Cook here. Dalvin Cook's career numbers, just to pay a little homage to him. Career numbers with the Vikings: third in yards in Vikings history with just under 6,000, second in yards per game with 82.1, and fourth in rushing touchdowns in Vikings history with 47. So definitely a solid player for the Vikings in his career. I am, maybe we will miss him to an extent with production, but I honestly don't think it's going to be that big of a drop off. Honestly, Tony, I just don't. I'm not saying that. It's no slight at Dalvin Cook, but it's just the devaluation of the running back situation. Of around the league, and if you have a good offensive line and anybody that can run through a hole back there, I mean, it's, you know what I mean? I mean, like, not me, right? Or maybe not you, but, a competent player that just came out of the draft, like a Dwayne McBride, who they got in the 7th round.
Sure.
He can run through those holes, Ty Chandler can run through those holes, or at least he did in college, Alexander Madison. So I think that three-headed monster alone makes me confident in the Vikings running back situation. And they've said it numerous times. They have faith in Ty Chandler, and I do too, based on his production in college. So I really am excited to see, especially now too, after a year learning the system when he was kind of hurt, and also maybe a year where he didn't have as much wear and tear on his tires. Ty Chandler, that is. Maybe he will be extremely fresh going into the year. And if you rotate him in with the likes of McBride and Madison, how much more fresh will those guys be when they get on the field? And I think that's something with Dalvin Cook. You could see games where maybe he just was worn out. And I don't know, maybe that's not totally accurate, but especially in the Mike Zimmer era, maybe not so much last year, but in the past, it'd be easy to say, oh, Dalvin Cook, he's probably gassed. He's been carrying the ball 30 times today or whatever. So I think this is going to be a refreshment for not only us as fans, but also for the running backs, the players. Even though they maybe want more touches, I think they'll be happy to concede to other guys getting touches if they're able to be more productive when they are on the field.
Well, and it kind of speaks to the go with the hot hand, type of mentality, right? If you've got a guy that, because of scheme, or the way the defense is presenting, they're the guy that's going to carry the rock for most of a game, and then the next game it might be a different guy, or you've got guys kind of splitting carries, and look, one guy's just having an on day and the other guy is not having a great day. I think it provides so much flexibility. Plus, look, I get a running back's a running back, but they're all individuals and they all have different skill sets, and they also move differently. Movement's a big thing, especially when it comes to playing defense, because all these guys can cut and move, and it's all about looking at those, making sure you're staying with the hips and everything. So if you're giving the defense different looks constantly, it also just provides an element of, uniqueness to every play. When you've got a different guy in there, and, you don't know especially if you got guys that are dual threat, guys that can catch the ball and run the ball too, where they can come out of the backfield and catch the ball, or maybe even split off into the slot. That was one thing that I was really excited about last year, and we saw it early in the year. And then, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it seemed to kind of taper off a bit, where I know that in the training camp, for instance, it was like, ooh, Dalvin's lining up in the slot. Ooh, and, that was cool. And like I said, we saw some of it. It definitely tapered off as the year went on. And I just think they probably got a tad bit more conservative with their game day play calling. There we go. Because they've started to settle in on what worked and what didn't work. So you know.
Yep. Yep. Words are hard. It's okay, Tony. I feel you.
They are hard. You can tell I'm in off-season mode here. I'm at the golf course. I mean, look at that. So
Yeah, you're living up. You're living it up. Living large. Living large. So, but
is that a fat
well,
joke?
well, if it is, I'll have to throw myself right in there with you. But that's okay. No, we'll say it's not. We could talk about it later.
That's right. We'll bump bellies later.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think that is pretty much all we have to talk about today that's really pressing. Want to thank you for joining us here live. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and look for more content. We will be posting the audio of this tomorrow morning, Friday morning. So that'll be out for people to consume. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section. Send us an email, skolpurplepodcast@gmail.com. And as we get closer to training camp, things will start to ramp up a little bit for not only the players, but also for us as we get things started with more content and things. It's been a busy off season, and it's getting closer, Tony. I mean, we're in the heat of summer right now, but before you know it, it'll be week 1, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Here we are. So,
well, we're 6 weeks from training camp, so stay tuned, everybody, because I know that Carson and I are gonna do our darndest to maybe do some stuff around training camp when that gets ramped up. But yeah, I mean, you think about it. When we get into late July, we start talking about training camp. We start talking about preseason games starting in August. So we're not that far out, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, all the Vikings fans. Let's enjoy our summer days, because let me tell you, the new football season will be upon us faster than you know it.
And the Twins really aren't giving us much to cheer about other than being first place in the worst division in baseball. But that's for another podcast. And maybe there will be a future Twins podcast. Who knows? Who knows?
You never know. Hey, if they finish over 500 this year, we better get one going.
That's true. That's true. That'd be an accomplishment. So, all right. Well, I believe that is going to do it for our live version here. Dalvin Cook going to be released most likely tomorrow or in the next couple of days, and Danielle Hunter potentially on the move as well. And we'll have more breaking news right here on the YouTube channel as it comes out, and we'll hopefully have more content here in the future weeks as well. But just bear with us as we bear with it being the off season and searching for content. So, and here we found it. We found some.
That's right.
Some. It's good. It's good, but also bittersweet. Bittersweet is how I would label it. So there you go. All right. Well, thanks, Tony. Thank you all, and we will catch you in the next one. As always, Skol.
Skol, baby.